Today on Total Maine, Commitment 2024, Maine Senator Angus King seeks re-election, what he hopes to achieve in a third term, and what's driving his opponents, Republican Demi Kouzounas, Democrat David Costello, and Independent Jason Cherry. Plus, in the arena, our expert panel weighs in on this four-person race. Hello and welcome to Total Maine. It is the final Sunday of October and we are just 9 days out from Election Day. Our Commitment 2024 coverage continues this weekend. Today we're taking a deep dive into Maine Senate race. Independent Senator Angus King is seeking a third term. 3 candidates are challenging him for the job. Kate McCusker is sitting down with all of them. Here's how they introduce themselves.
Former Maine governor and two-term senator Angus King is running for re-election.
Really didn't intend to run again this year, but the circumstances really made me think it was important to do so.
As an independent, he hopes to work towards the middle ground in Congress.
I don't want to see the Senate become so polarized, nobody's talking to each other and nobody's getting anything done. My whole reason for doing this is to make it work for the country and for Maine.
Former chair of the Maine GOP, Republican Demi Kouzounas, was called on to face the incumbent.
But I got a phone call from Senator Susan Collins, who asked me to consider running.
Kouzounas is the daughter of Greek immigrants and previously worked as a dentist in Maine.
I was brought up here in Saco, the same town that I still live in today, not speaking English till the age of 6, where my mom and I went to classes to learn English so my mother could be naturalized. I'm a grandmother to 3 beautiful granddaughters. I am a dentist by trade, and I'm a veteran, served in the military from 81 to 84 during the Cold War in Germany. And I'm running because I think that Maine has become very difficult to live.
Democrat David Costello also grew up in Maine before entering a life of politics. He now lives with his wife in Brunswick.
Dropped out at 19 to work in my first of 3 national presidential campaigns. I'm very concerned about the long-term health of our economy and environment and the performance of our government.
Independent candidate Jason Cherry lived all over the country before settling in Unity. He believes his background will help him if elected.
I was a defense attorney for a while, also a conservation officer. I joined the FBI as a special agent.
Kate McCusker reporting for us there. She joins us in studio here on this Sunday. Kate, thanks for being here.
Terry, happy to be here. I sat down with all 4 of the candidates to discuss the issues most important to them, as well as the issues you said you value most.
Angus King hopes to continue efforts he believes will lower the cost of living.
Housing is a high priority because that contributes so critically to the cost of living. And then we've got things like the high cost of groceries. And one of the problems that I'm focused on is what I call concentration in the economy. And that's why my fight is on keeping competition alive in the marketplace to bring costs down.
Costello is a strong supporter of Democratic priorities, while Cherry disagrees with some policies of fellow independent Angus King.
I would support, again, much more robust efforts to make housing and health care much more affordable. I'm supportive of universal health care.
One of the things that I disagree with Senator King is to raise the age of Social Security eligibility to 70 years old. I don't think that the younger generations are going to be able to afford living costs.
King says he hopes not to raise the retirement age, but he is considering several efforts to protect Social Security.
I think there's some other solutions other than a retirement age that can largely cover that deficit. It's true that I'm trying to work on this problem, and it's true that whenever you talk about Social Security, you're going to get a whole lot of, 20 or 30 different proposals, but I'm not prepared to say now that raising the retirement age is going to be necessary.
Running a dental practice and teaching students, Kouzounas believes she has a unique perspective to address many problems in our state.
I think the cost of living and the expenses and inflation has really caused a problem for Mainers. We need to drop the interest rate, we need to bring the cost of living up, and we have to stop spending.
Following the Lewiston mass shooting, King proposed measures to regulate high-capacity magazines and support mental health.
The Go Safe Act basically says no more than 10 bullets in a magazine, period. Can't be modified, can't be enlarged, and we believe, looking at the history of these mass shootings, that would make a significant difference. But the other piece is mental health and brain damage. Lewiston involved an individual who was in the military whose brain had been damaged by repeated exposure to explosions. This is where myself, Susan Collins, others are working with the military to say, you got to pay attention to this.
Costello also believes we need stronger gun safety laws.
I certainly have always supported a universal background check, safe gun storage, an assault weapons ban.
Cherry is against an assault weapons ban, but supports strengthening red flag laws.
We need to make this reasonable. It protects our Second Amendment. We cannot have these school shootings.
Kazunis, however, says there shouldn't be any changes to our current gun laws and says it's about enforcing the laws on the books.
It's a mental health problem. Adding more laws and more, mandates, everything else, it's not going to solve the problem. We need to truly treat these people, treat the mental illness that's happening.
Women's reproductive freedom is an important issue for King, and he pledged to support efforts to codify Roe v. Wade.
That's one of my highest priorities. And this idea that it should be state by state, a woman's reproductive rights, individual rights should not depend on their zip code. It's as simple as that.
With some limitations, Cherry believes individual states should determine their own abortion legislation.
The federal government should establish minimum thresholds and then allow the states to vote to extend when a woman or when an abortion can be legal.
The Republican described herself as pro-choice, and while she did place some limits on when abortions should be conducted, she shared personal experiences that shaped her view.
I do not believe in late-term abortion if the baby is viable. I personally went through an assault in college, which I didn't even tell my mom and dad about because they would have pulled me away from college. So I understand that aspect of it. And at the same time, I struggle with infertility. That's why my kids are 7 years apart in age. And thank God to modern medicine that I was able to have a second child.
Along with his Democratic priorities, Costello strongly supports women's reproductive freedom.
Unlike Senator King, I would have supported the effort to remove the filibuster that would allow a vote in the Senate to codify Roe v. Wade.
But King says removing the filibuster could be problematic later on.
Let's say you get a Republican president and a Republican Senate and they want to pass a national abortion ban. They want to make it, national and override the laws of Maine and every other state. We would have no way to stop it.
He also criticized Republicans for blocking a border security bill last year and says he has and will continue to push for a solution.
I've been strong on border security ever since I've been there. In fact, the prior strongest border security bill I and Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota were the prime sponsors of. We got it to the floor. It was a pretty simple, straightforward bill that would have built Donald Trump's wall, and it would have accounted for the Dreamers.
Costello also wants to support Dreamers while helping to solve the root problems of people seeking asylum.
We need to look at other countries and help support those countries so that people will want to remain and don't have to flee.
But Cherry says there needs to be another look at the benefits offered.
I want immigration. We need immigration for the country, but we need to do so in a logical manner.
And Kazunis says she traveled to the border and wants to do more to prohibit illegal immigration.
They're being trafficked. The cartels in Yuma, Arizona County, the sheriff told me, makes $15 billion a month. That's obscene. The other problem I have is with fentanyl. Fentanyl is killing our addicted. It needs to close. Completely close the border and expand legal immigration.
Kate McCusker reporting for us there, also joining us in studio today. And age has also been a factor this election cycle, Kate, especially in the presidential race with President Biden stepping aside. Angus King, one of the oldest senators in Congress right now, so could his age play a role in this race here?
Well, Terry, King is 80 years old, just a year younger than President Biden. All three of his opponents say 80 should be sort of a stopping point for politicians, but King is confident he can continue to serve Maine for another 6 years.
The youngest in the race, 54-year-old Jason Cherry, says we should have age and term limits in Congress.
I would propose 80 years old, based upon the National Institute of Health Board's research that cognitive decline can start rapidly at 80 years old. And even though we will elect somebody at 80 years old, they can have a sharp decline after that.
64-year-old David Costello supports retirement mandates.
What I would do is I would actually establish it for 80, and I would allow those who want to continue to serve. I couldn't imagine myself at 80. I'd suspect I'd be hanging with grandkids and playing pickleball or whatever.
At 68, Demi Kazunas also supports term limits and says it's time for a new voice in D.C.
If elected, I would serve 2 terms, which would get me to 80, and then I would retire. We thank him for his service, but that doesn't mean because you've done all this work that you should continue. No more than I should continue being a dentist at 95 with a shaky hand.
But 80-year-old Angus King says he is ready and able.
I feel great. I have the energy, engagement, and if I didn't feel like I could do it, I wouldn't be doing this.
Do you have someone that you trust that could potentially say to you, I don't know if you could continue?
My wife, Mary, is the most honest person on earth. There is no way she's going to let me do this job if I'm compromised.
And the outcome of this race could have a big impact on who controls the U.S. Senate. We're going to break down the state of the campaign with the hosts of our In the Arena podcast when Total Maine returns. Stay with us. Welcome back to this special edition of Total Maine. Last week, Digital Research released its Critical Insights poll, and it's giving us a look at how Mainers could vote on November 5th. Maine's 2nd congressional district race is one of the most closely watched in the country. This one could come down to undecided voters. The poll is tied right now at 38% between Democratic Congressman Jared Golden and his Republican opponent Austin Theriault. 22% of those polled said that they were unsure. Today, we've been focusing on Maine's race for U.S. Senate. This Digital Research poll did not poll the Senate race, but it did back in April. And at that time, it found Senator King getting 57% of the first round vote, eliminating a need for ranked choice voting. Jason Cherry had yet to qualify for the ballot and was not involved in that poll. In a Pan Atlantic Research omnibus poll that was released in September, King led Republican Demi Kazunas by 30%. Democrat David Costello was at 8%, with Jason Cherry at 1%. 16% of those polled were undecided. All right, we are in the arena here on this Sunday, and we're talking about the race for Senate here. We have some new polling data, which we were just talking about here. One data point which jumped off the page from that Digital Insight poll showing that Senator Angus King has a 58% approval rating. It didn't provide data on this race specifically, but it shows that his approval rating is pretty high. What does that tell you about this race?
It tells us what we've known all along, that if Angus King wants to keep that seat, he probably can, as long as he wants to, Phil.
Yeah, I'm surprised it isn't higher than 58%. He's done a very good job of being a statesman and a diplomat. He communicates well. He connects with people from all regions of the state. I don't think he's going to have to break a sweat for his election.
I think that 58% actually, Terry, will be what he gets in this race, 58 to 60%. Look, it's interesting in this race because there is a Democrat who's running, but Democrats are not really backing him from the national level. They're really behind Angus because he caucuses with Democrats. For the most part, he's really been he has strong values that are connected to what Maine people believe. So I think he's going to waltz back into this seat, and rightly so. He's done a good job.
One of Senator King's core arguments is that he serves the middle, that the Senate is losing the middle, and he's someone who can help get things done. Do you think that that has resonated with voters here?
Well, it may resonate with voters in terms of that's what emotionally they'd like to have, Ethan. I don't know that that's possible at this moment.
Yeah, nobody's really governing at all, unfortunately, right? And if we have divided government, it becomes even worse. So hopefully, if there is a Democrat elected, the Democratic majority in the Senate allows some actual movement forward. But he tries to say that he's governing from that place. But honestly, until we get rid of the filibuster, we're not going to get much done.
And Phil, he is certainly able to work with people on either side of the aisle. He has proven that. Whether you get the results people want to see is another matter.
Yeah, and I think that's the key points. Where are the results? There aren't any. And it's not because of him. It's because, in my opinion, Congress has abandoned their responsibility to legislate. They let things brew to the last minute. They get behind closed doors. They put together this big omnibus bill and they say, you got to vote for it or the government's going to shut down.
Well, or they say you got to have 60 votes to pass something instead of 50, which is the majority, 51. So that's really the log. There's lots of bills that would get 50, 55, 56 votes, but for some reason we've decided we're going to give them 60 is what a majority needs.
The Republican in this race, Demi Kouzounis, she has repeatedly said in interviews that she was recruited to run for Senate by Senator Susan Collins. Senator Collins, Senator King, they've had a years-long relationship. Is there anything to read into there? Does that factor into this race?
You know, obviously Susan Collins would like Republicans to control the Senate. The question is, did she actively say to Demi Kouzounis, you have to run for this, or Ethan, maybe it was a different process altogether?
Yeah, I expect that Susan Collins, like many leaders of their party, would step up and probably make a few calls to different people to say you should consider it. I think she was not very happy when Demi Kouzounis, the day she went in, said, Susan Collins asked me to run. Susan Collins backed off of that and said, hey, wait a minute, I just made calls to people to say you ought to think about this. You know, as Phil pointed out, she hasn't been campaigning that hard for Demi since then, so maybe that tells you something.
And Collins and King have a pretty good working relationship. We hope that will continue, but something like this can certainly nettle.
Oh, that's definitely a pebble in Angus's shoe for sure, but I think it's incumbent upon him. Ethan and I can both relate to this, being from different political parties. Your caucus is always wondering, where are the good candidates near your district? And Susan, obviously, and Angus, I'm sure, as well, would say, you know, there's a couple of people here that might be able to be successful.
And look, as Phil often says on the podcast, recruiting is like 90% of the game in terms of whether you're actually going to win races. You win or lose them on the first, once the name's on the ballot. The rest is just the game you have to play to get there.
Reproductive rights factoring into this race. Kouzounis describes herself as being pro-choice, but in that interview with Kate McCusker, she says that she opposes late-term abortion, and she has told us before she would support legislation banning abortion after viability.
And she's threading the needle, as she must do, because Demi Kouzounis is a big Trump supporter, Phil, and so you don't want to abandon that, but you also, in a state like Maine, where people have expressed a more pro-choice point of view, you've got to try to win them over too.
Right, and let's be clear, the U.S. Constitution did not speak to abortion, which is why the Supreme Court said in the Constitution, if it doesn't have federal authority in the Constitution, it's a state's rights responsibility, and that's what the Supreme Court did. And Maine just liberalized its abortion laws because of it. So unless Debbie's going to get elected and then propose national legislation or a constitutional amendment, this is a conversation that's not going to go very far.
Yeah, but Phil, the Constitution speaks to the right to privacy.
Correct.
The Constitution speaks to the right to equity and equal treatment under the law, and that's what, unfortunately, the Supreme Court threw out the precedent of both of those to say all of a sudden women do not have that right to privacy anymore, that women are not going to be treated equally under the law the way you and I are in terms of the healthcare decisions that we get to make.
David Costello is the lone Democrat in this race. How did he come across?
I thought he checked all the boxes that Democrats want checked. His problem here is Democrats really just want to stick with the winner, who is Angus King.
Yeah, you know, arguably there are two Democrats in that race. David did well, but he doesn't have the energy, financially speaking, or the party infrastructure behind him.
And Ethan, he may well be somebody looking to the future. I'm going to establish some credentials here in this race, a race I probably can't win, but maybe next time there's a seat open, I might have a shot.
Yeah, you know, I really appreciated Kate's report on this because I actually learned a little bit about David Costello. Being a Democrat, I pay pretty close attention, but I didn't sort of know his pedigree, the influence he had in past administrations and some of the work he had done. So, and he certainly checked all the boxes, except that he's not Angus and he can't win. So I think that, but I think he does have a bright future. Hopefully he'll run for Senate or something, state Senate.
A race with two independents here. Jason Cherry also in this four-person race. How did he come across in his pitch to voters?
You know, I just don't know what kind of impact he's going to have, Ethan.
I don't think he's going to have any impact at all being independent in this race. He probably should have run in the Republican primary based on what Kate was reporting. He seems like he's pretty conservative, so he probably should have run there. But he will come in fourth, I would expect, in this race.
Yeah, if you're unknown and have no money, you're going to be fourth.
Does age matter in this race? Angus King, 80 years old, he was asked about it.
Yeah, voters have seen repeatedly, he seems a very vigorous 80-year-old man, you know, and he's sharp. The question is, this is a long term, a 6-year term.
Good
So
point.
80 now and 86 before that term is over, that may be something you have to consider, Phil.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And under our Maine Constitution, if Angus is unable to fulfill that 6-year term, the governor, which we have a gubernatorial election in 2 years, gets to appoint someone. We could be talking about Senator Strimling.
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine who you think is going to be the next governor.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure. That's a bit of a stretch. But, you know, look, he's fine. I think the issue is always not the number. It's how energetic you are, what kind of clarity you have in terms of being able to understand the issues and articulate the issues. Angus clearly has that level of energy, that level of articulation. I think it's going to be fine even 6 years from now.
All right. Remember, new episodes of In the Arena drop every Thursday. You can watch on our website, WMTW.com, or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys for being here.
You bet. Welcome. Good morning.
Well, you've heard the candidates for Senate share their positions on important policies, but we've got their responses to perhaps the biggest question of all next. Where is the best place to get lobster in Maine? Their answers when Total Maine returns. All right, welcome back here to Total Maine this Sunday as we continue to look at the race for Maine Senate. We end today with something fun.
Well, Terry, after discussing policy positions with all 4 candidates, I also asked about their favorite place to get Maine lobster.
The wharf at Five Islands in Georgetown. The lobster you eat there spent the night before in Saginaw Bay or Casco Bay or offshore. They're fresh. The people are great, and besides, last summer my granddaughter worked there.
I usually go to Bailey's Lobster, and I love a lobster roll. And I know that people may not, being a dentist, I don't like to eat just plain lobster because I hate getting the lobster juice all over me. And dentists are typically very particular. We're very kind of germophobic a little bit.
A place called Warren's in Kittery. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a massive, massive lobster roll. And of course, it's easier to eat a roll because you don't have to crack through a lobster.
Eagles Landing, right north of Brewer, and I like it in the grilled cheese, unfortunately.
Whoa!
That's a good, honest reaction from you, Kate, and some quality answers there from all the candidates, no doubt. If you missed any of today's profiles, you can find them on our website right now, WMTW.com, and inside the app for Maine's total coverage. You can also see Kate's interviews with all of the other candidates in Maine's 2nd Congressional District race as well. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at the 5 questions on the statewide ballot. Thank you so much for joining us today on Total Maine. For Kate McCusker, Kate, thanks for being here today. I'm Terry Stackhouse. We're going to leave you with images from along Higgins Beach in Scarborough. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We'll see you right back here next weekend for another edition of Total Maine.